Scientists often study things in their parts, taking one element and studying different angles of it so that they can explain how this element affects the whole. So they're breaking systems up to study the parts. For instance, in the case of phonemic awareness in the 60s and 70s, it was a major surprise to realize that learning to read was so much dependent on phonology, upon the sounds of language, that learning to read might have been built on top of the sounds of our language of phonology. And they speculated that perhaps in this whole system of many elements that impact reading, that perhaps phonemic awareness particularly was causing reading achievement. That if you had strong aptitude for perceiving the individual sounds in words, you might be more likely to be a good reader and have the whole system functioning. And so they did what good scientists would do. They picked apart phonemic awareness and taught it in isolation, because you can't really prove causality if you're doing multiple things simultaneously. Imagine a nutrition study where all the participants who were in the experimental condition stopped smoking, ate lots of vegetables, exercised, drank water, and got good sleep. At the end of that study, if they were doing well, what was the cause? Was it the smoking? Was it the sleep? Was it all of the above? You have to pick it apart. But just because the scientists pick it apart doesn't mean that then tells us how to teach. It doesn't teach us from a nutritional standpoint how to live. If they just did smoking in isolation and demonstrated that it caused poor health outcomes, which they have, would we then say, oh, that's all I need to worry about is just avoiding smoking and I can do whatever else I want? No, we have to look at the totality of the science. And when we look at not just experiments that were demonstrated to prove causality about specifically phonemic awareness, then we see, well, putting all the pieces together is actually how the brain learns to read. The brain learns to read through that integration of semantics or meaning, phonology or sounds, and orthography or the spelling, the written word. Putting the pieces together. Our best reading models are called connectionist models. And so with the case of phonemic awareness, I think we can learn something that's instructive about reading in general. We don't need to pick apart the components of reading and teach them in isolation. It's much more likely that when we put the whole collection of things that we need to do to be a reader together, that we're going to get better outcomes. A lot of reading programs have taken that idea because of the experiments that showed that phonemic awareness alone could be causally beneficial to reading. They've taken that to mean that that's how we should teach reading. But we actually know that when we put things together holistically in the context of real reading and put phonemic awareness with print and meaning, then students do better. So the case of phonemic awareness is emblematic of a bigger principle that I think that we can learn from the science of reading. Learning to read is about connecting language and the written word, at least in those early stages when we're concerned about word reading. The pieces need to go together. So here at Reading Simplified, we want to kind of throw out all the stuff that's in isolation and put all the pieces together. So we don't just teach phonemic awareness over here and some letter sounds over there, and then maybe later on decoding and later on spelling or handwriting. We integrate those elements into as many activities as we can so that they're connected. For the child, this is more efficient and it's also more clearly understandable to them. In the videos below, I'm going to show you some of our core activities like Build It and Switch It and Read It, and all of them integrate the beginning processes of what it takes to be a reader. like the concept of a word, left to right tracking, the concept of the alphabetic principle, phonemic segmentation, phonemic manipulation, phonemic blending, letter sound knowledge, decoding, and spelling. All of those can be done in just a handful of activities that integrate activities and don't isolate them as separate building blocks that lead up to reading. We don't need to teach information to young readers in isolation. We can reveal it to them how it works in a connected way, that our written language is a code for sounds. Let's show that to them in the context of real words. Let's have them build, take apart, and manipulate real words with meaning, and we will be more in alignment with how science has indicated the brain learns to read. It's through connections of our language systems. And then we are going to get better outcomes. It will save us time as teachers because we don't have to create a different activity for every single element. And I think ultimately, the best thing will be that our students catch on more quickly and then develop the joy of reading because they know what they're doing.